First of all, we recognise that although we've been assigned under Section 34 determination last December, the owner obligation to acquire, to procure, operate the nuclear power stations, it's part of a bigger issue. It's part of a programme. Predominantly it's an Eskom activity because we're the big part of the play, but there's also the next end of the fuel cycle. So we must think on that lines. We must not think about it as just as what's best for Eskom and the smallest possible line. We must think of how it fits into country approach. And that sort of brings us and Nexa together and brings the localization, not just to the point of cost. The other one we're slightly fanatical about is what we call the reference unit. Now what this means is that we're not going to go and specify a nuclear power station for them to design for us. We've put a specification for a nuclear power plant, which is our ideal, what we'd really like to have. We're asking the vendors to choose their design that they're currently building that meets our requirements as far as it can. So we're going to be asking them to bid to build one of the machines they're already building somewhere else to exactly the same design in South Africa, and then to list to us what the differences are between what we would ideally like and what they are currently commercially building. And then we will go through that difference and say, is that really important? Can we live with it? Because we don't want a situation where we end up with a unique machine to ourselves where all the trouble of being the first of a class comes in. So that's the intention. There will be differences between ourselves and the machine in wherever it comes from, but those will be understood and explained. So that's the second thing we're very keen on. And note, it's not about we need a proven machine that somebody's actually run in service for 20 years, because it's quite funny. If you go to the local garage and you want to buy a motor car and you say, I want a motor car, a brand new motor car that you've got 20 years experience of running, you can't buy anything because they aren't building that model anymore. So you've got to get the model they're currently building. But we do want an established design base. In other words, the basics they're doing is based upon something they've done in the past and has worked. So there we do say, in this design you're offering us, we don't want to see major features which are not present in previous designs at all, and therefore you might have a technical problem. So the reference unit is about trying to say when we build it, we don't have any surprises in the build process. And the established design base is to make sure we're not buying a new technology to the point of it causing us operation plan. The next one is fundamental, is that we're looking at a vendor-led construction for the early units. When we built Coburg, and looking overseas at success stories, this is not something you buy the Meccano set from the vendor and put it together yourself. You ask the vendor with his experience and his knowledge of project management to come in and manage the project for you, and essentially it gives you what's called an EPC, or engineering, procurement and construction contract, which is a single point contract. You basically have a single contract like Coburg was, and you end up saying the penalties are on them, the integration's on them, with an intention that over time, as we get to later units, as we roll the program out, we will transfer that to ourselves, to the South Africans, over a period of time as we go forward. But it will not be on day one we try and be world-class experts at something which we haven't done in this country for a long time. But to go with that, we've got another issue, which is that the aim is to go for a fleet build. Now, people get excited about the word fleet build because they say Eskom's going to build this massive fleet of nuclear power stations. What's interesting, Eskom really builds its coal stations this way because each of our 6-packs is 6 units together. That's a fleet. We learn across that fleet, oddly enough. You'll find any Eskom coal station builds, the first machine we build is on every site has always been a bit challenging. I say Medupi 6 has been really challenging. And then as you go through the rest of them, it gets easier and easier because you're repeating yourself. You're learning as you're doing it. So we want to get the same process that over the fleet, although we may only contract initially for the first 2 machines, which is we will actually plan the process and do the long-term actions on the basis of a fleet construction. And the last one, which is, before I get into a couple of those, the last one is clearly that where the plants will go beyond the first few, which we see most likely be at Tastepunt in the Eastern Cape, is based upon where the grid requires to put them, not where we as engineers would like to put them. So we're looking mainly at coastal sites, we're looking at future sites on the coast, potentially more at Coburg, but maybe elsewhere on the coast. And the other one, which is not just a principle, it's something that's not negotiable, is this is going to be a transparent process as far as we make it transparent. We issued the request for information on the website. We expect to issue the request for proposals when it goes out, again, on a public website. it'll go through National Treasury because that's the national process. And we are, although we would probably be able to conclude today who was capable of bidding, and if we could do a closed bid, we don't plan to do so. We plan to have an open bid with the qualification criteria so that the public can see what exactly we're going for and how we're doing.